All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a great fall break. Um, we're going to start Unit 2, and we're going to go actually in the order that I planned. Unit 2 is divided into two parts, so there'll be two tests. We'll do Congress and the judiciary, and then take a test, and then we'll do the executive and bureaucracy, and then do a test on that. So we're going to start today, and just I didn't plan it this way, but it's going to work out perfectly. Right when we start judiciary is when the hearings are going to start for the new Supreme Court justice, so it'll be perfect timing. I couldn't have timed it any better myself. So we will get to that. We'll talk about that when we get there. So this first part, there's a lot of notes today, so I'm going to divide it into two parts. So there'll be part A, which we'll do this one, and then there'll be a part B, part 1B. So let's get started here, talking about Congress. Okay, first of all, we have to remember that we have a bicameral Congress, so that means two houses. Hopefully we know that. All states do have a bicameral legislature as well, except Nebraska. Nebraska has a unicameral legislature, so it's one house. So they don't have a House and a Senate. They just have one body. That's a legislative body. And one way to put this is some way we usually don't see it is that since the House and the Senate must pass the same bill, it has to be the same, essentially down to the punctuation, before it goes to the president for signature or the president's veto. Each house actually has a veto against each other. And this is sort of an important concept. We have to understand that whether they're in control of the same party or the House and the Senate are in control of different parties like it is now, they actually have to work together to get something to go to the president. So again, each house then has a veto against each other. We don't usually use that term, but that's the idea. So we're going to talk about some things about the House and the Senate, some differences that you have to know. Okay, so that's where we start. First of all, we have to know that the House versus the Senate is more centralized, more hierarchical. Party loyalty is much more common and much more demanded and much more important in the House. Although these days, with the way partisanship is, the Senate is pretty much very, very party loyal as well, no matter which party it is. Leaders do more leading in the House, mostly because there's a lot more members. That's also why it's more centralized, more hierarchical. You know, there's 435 House members. There's only 100 Senate members. So the House has to be much more centrally organized. Something unique to the House you must know is the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee is a committee in the House only that reviews bills before they're sent to the floor for a vote. They set the debate timing, the calendar, and the rules for amendments. The Rules Committee sets, okay, we'll have 3 hours of debate. We'll have 6 hours of debate. We'll have 2 hours of debate. And we'll allow 5 amendments. We'll allow no amendments. We'll allow some certain amount of amendments or whatever. So very important part. They are appointed by the Speaker of the House, which we'll talk about shortly, and they're responsive to the leadership. So it is it's a very important committee that's essentially controlled by the Speaker. And then it has the ability to send those bills then to the floor. The Senate is different. We'll talk about something unique to the Senate momentarily. It is smaller, of course, 100 versus 435. Therefore, it is less centralized. It is somewhat less disciplined, or it can be. Party leaders do the scheduling, so there's no Rules Committee. That's why it's specific to the House. The function of the Rules Committee is done by the Senate Majority Leader and with consultation with the Senate Minority Leader. The thing unique to the Senate is the filibuster that we'll talk about. Basically, the Senate rules allow what we call unlimited debate. So it means that bills can essentially be held up. It takes what's called a cloture vote. You must know this term. A cloture vote to cut off debate. At the moment, it takes 60 votes now to what we call invoke cloture. And what that means is basically it's a vote to have a vote. So at the moment, if a senator wants to do what's called invoking cloture, then they just have to say that. It's usually one side versus the other, and it's the minority side that does this. They'll say that they want to invoke cloture, and it will take 60 votes to then allow things to proceed to a regular vote, which just takes a majority. So 41 senators can hold up any bill, virtually any bill coming out of the Senate. It's a very important part of their rules. We'll talk about that in a moment on the next slide, because we're going to continue with the filibuster. Over the last 30 years or so, it has grown tremendously, the use of it. It used to be ages ago, 100 years ago, that a senator actually had to be up there talking and talking and talking and talking for a very long period of time. So what happens now is that they just say, we want to do a cloture vote. And that just holds everything open. And in the reading, you'll see what we're talking about a little bit more. So all they have to do is keep a cloture vote from reaching 60. So again, 41 senators can halt anything, virtually anything in regular order that they want to. So we get to this question, why not change the rules? Because this is a Senate rule. It is not, it's not in the Constitution or anything. Each house can set their own rules, and the Senate has this rule, and it's actually an important rule that they put in place. It used to take 67 votes to change the rules. That was done away with in about 2014, and when the Senate Democratic majority decided we're going to do this by majority rule, and so now it only takes a majority to change the rules, and then they changed the rules. The reason that it used to be that way is senators knew that they may be in the minority one day and may want to use the filibuster, but they did it. And the Democrats did this in 2014. They removed the filibuster from certain things. So the Democrat Senate changed the rules with a majority vote and ended filibusters. And you should say, it shouldn't say for most bills. Please make sure that it says for most appointments. I have to change that in there, and I forgot to. For most appointments. What they did was leave it in place for Supreme Court nominations and several other things. The Republican Senate has now changed it to include Supreme Court nominations. They changed it in 2016 when they got the majority back. So what happened is the Democratic Senate was not happy that the Republicans were filibustering a lot of circuit court and district court appointees from Obama. So they got really mad and decided to change the rules, and they didn't think it would come back and haunt them, which it did, because the Republicans, and Mitch McConnell was the minority leader then, he said, you guys don't want to do this. You really don't want to do this, because when we get the majority again, we're going to do it too. And the Democrats did it anyway. Senator Harry Reid was the minority leader then. He has since retired. The Democrats really don't like this now, because now it's the shoes on the other foot, and they don't like it being used against them. But too bad, so sad is really how it works. So now it includes Supreme Court nominations. So if the Democrats hadn't changed the rules in 2014, the Democrats would have been able to filibuster and probably stop all of President Trump's Supreme Court nominees for sure. They would have been able to stop Gorsuch. They would have been able to stop Kavanaugh, and then this upcoming one, Amy Coney Barrett. They'd be able to stop her. But now they can't. So they're mad. And that is called the nuclear option. And what makes them so mad is if they get power again, what they are planning on doing is changing the rule to eliminate the filibuster altogether. So what that would do, and we have to kind of understand this, the only thing standing in the way of the Senate becoming the House is this filibuster rule. If the filibuster rule goes away, period, so they don't have to do it even on regular bills, which is where it applies now. What that means is we're going to have the tyranny of the majority that Madison warned us against in Federalist 10. If the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and if Biden wins after this election, they're going to ram down things that they'd never be able to get through with a filibuster available in the Senate for the Republicans. And that is going to lead to a tyranny of the majority, which 50% of the country will not like what they do. So we will see what happens. Okay, continuing on, let's talk about members. I got to make sure I get through this. There are 535 total members, 100 senators, 435 representatives. Their salary is about $174,000 a year. The leaders get more. I think the Speaker of the House gets something like $210 or $220, something like that. They also get a staff budget allowance to hire staff and things like that, because they need staff, between $1.1 and $1.3 million a year for their staff budgets. They get travel and franking privileges as well. We'll talk about franking if you don't know what that is. Later on in this part of the unit, we will talk about what franking is when we talk about advantages incumbents have. So we'll get back to that, so don't worry about that. So what does it take? We need to know the differences between the House and the Senate. The House, in Article 1, Section 2, Constitution, you have to be 25. You have to be a citizen for 7 years, and you have to live in the state. That's all you have to do. And we have to remember that they have 2-year terms, and they're up every 2 years, all 435 of them every 2 years. So again, here in 2020, all 435 are up for re-election. Remember, this is the majoritarian portion of the government, the most majoritarian. Senate is a little bit different. Number one, it's set in a different place, 30 years old instead of 25, citizen for 9 years instead of 7, and you have to live in the state as well, so that's the same thing. And their terms are 6-year staggered terms. So every 2 years, a third of the Senate is up for re-election, and it's usually, it's very weird in Georgia this year that 2 senators are up for election at the same time, but that's because of certain situations that happened with a senator resigning for health reasons and things like that. Okay, one of the complaints always about Congress is, are they rich? Let's look. I have 2014 averages. It doesn't really matter. Republican senators average 2.9 million of wealth. Democratic senators 1.7. The Democratic senators were more than that right before that, except they lost a huge amount when Senator Kerry, who was a Democrat, became Secretary of State in Obama's second term, and he was worth $248 million just by himself. However, the 4 richest, even in the Senate, are Democrats. Republican representatives, about 884,000. Democratic representatives, about 929,000. So who are they? Really quick. They come from law, they come from business, they come from academia, they come from as medical doctors, all sorts of things. But usually from those types of areas, which means generally they have high levels of education, master's degrees, certainly bachelor's degrees for the very most part. They are Black, they're Hispanic, they're Native, they're Asian, they're female. They're all sorts of different groups, and we'll see that on the next slide. But it is worthwhile at least to point out what Georgia is. So let's look at the Georgia delegation. The Senate delegation, there's 1 white male and 1 white female. And for the House, there are 9 white males, 4 black males, and 1 black female. And that's the way it sits right now. This may change after the election in November. We will have to see what happens for each of those. It might change. Who knows? So this last slide, this is nothing you have to know as far as taking notes on. So don't take notes on this. This just gives you an idea of the demographics of the 116th Congress, which is the one we're in. Gives you the average age of House members and Senate members, college education, average length of service, 131 women, which is a record, 53 African Americans at the moment, 51 Hispanic or Latino, which is a record, 20 members who are Asian, Indian or Pacific Islander, Asian and Indian are Asian. That's also a record number, and a record for American Indians or Native Americans serving the House. So this is the end of part 1. We'll do part 2 momentarily, so we'll pick up with the organization of the House and of the Senate. See you on the other side.